Welcome to the Psych Ignition channel. There's a man in every room you overlook, the quiet one, the observer, the one who says nothing yet seems to know everything. History has shown us that the loudest voices rarely shape the outcome. It's the silent, the unseen, the ones who move without announcement, who quietly bend reality to their will. The Sigma male isn't loud. He doesn't fight for recognition. He doesn't need applause to validate his existence. While others scramble to be noticed, he watches, waits, and calculates. Every glance, every word, every action becomes data, every interaction, a step toward a vision only he can see. Tonight, we'll uncover the subtle, unsettling, and undeniably powerful truths about the Sigma male, the kind of man who rewrites the rules of the game without ever stepping into the spotlight. Listen closely, because by the end, you'll understand why the quietest man in the room may also be the most dangerous. Let's begin. Number 1. They disarm through underestimation. The most dangerous thing about a Sigma male isn't what he shows, it's what he hides. He doesn't parade himself as a threat. He doesn't demand attention. He doesn't perform for the crowd. Instead, he blends in, cloaked in ordinary silence. That illusion of indifference becomes his greatest weapon. People drop their guard around him because he seems harmless, too quiet, too detached, too uninterested to matter. But that's where the danger begins. Because while they relax, he observes. While they speak, he listens. And while they reveal themselves, he remains unreadable. He notices every subtle gesture, every inconsistency, every motive disguised as conversation. He reads what others miss, not the words, but the intent behind them. And because he's dismissed as irrelevant, no one protects themselves from him. That's how he collects leverage without even trying. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't chase. He simply observes until the time is right. And when he moves, it feels like an ambush. No warning. No build-up. Just quiet precision. By the time people realize the Sigma they ignored was always capable of dismantling their entire structure, it's already too late. Even more unnerving, he doesn't always use what he knows. Sometimes he just keeps it, stored, waiting, silent. Because true power doesn't need to prove itself. Anyone can prepare for a visible threat. But a man who convinces you he isn't one. That's the kind of man who can undo you without ever raising his voice. Number 2. They don't signal their moves. Most men can't help themselves, they broadcast their intentions. They brag before they act, leak their plans in casual talk, and betray their next step with body language that screams for validation. They want to be seen as powerful, as strategic, as someone. But the Sigma male plays a different game entirely. He moves in silence, no hints, no warnings, no foreshadowing. When he decides to act, there are no ripples before the wave. There's just stillness, then impact. By the time the world realizes what he's done, the move is already complete. This isn't mystery for the sake of mystery, it's discipline. In a world obsessed with display, the most lethal form of control is quiet restraint. Psychology calls it low emotional leakage, the rare ability to suppress signals that reveal internal intent. The Sigma has mastered it. He doesn't telegraph excitement, anger, or ambition. He simply acts when it's time, and that unpredictability makes him a ghost in the field of competitors who can't stop announcing themselves. People grow uneasy around unpredictability. The human brain is wired to look for patterns, for signs that help it feel in control. When someone gives none, it creates a void, a silent space filled with discomfort and second-guessing. And that's where the Sigma gains his edge. While others talk themselves into mistakes, trying to read him, he stays motionless, unreadable, unshakable. If he decides to shift his path, there's no debate. He simply vanishes from one chapter and reappears at the next. If he chooses to end a connection, there's no warning, just silence and absence. If he spots an opportunity, you won't see him preparing, you'll only see him arriving, already in position. That's what makes him so difficult to counter. You can brace yourself against an enemy you see coming. But how do you defend against the man who never shows his hand until the game is already won? The Sigma doesn't move like a spotlight, he moves like a shadow. And the danger of a shadow is that you never see it coming, until it's already behind you. Number 3. They're invisible until it's too late. The most unnerving thing about a Sigma male isn't what you see, it's what you don't. He doesn't shine under lights, doesn't fight for attention, and doesn't need to stand at the center of the room. He exists quietly, just outside the noise, where he can see everything clearly while no one's really looking at him. And that invisibility is his camouflage. Most threats announce themselves. You can spot the loud ones, the ones flexing their authority, the ones desperate to prove dominance. Those men trigger alarms. They draw attention, resistance, and countermoves. But the Sigma? He triggers nothing. He moves under radar, beneath assumptions, behind the curtain of indifference. People look at him and think, harmless. They see his calm, his distance, his silence, and confuse it for passivity. And that misreading gives him all the time he needs. While others scramble to be recognized, he's gathering information. While they fight for position, he's studying motives. And while they're blinded by their own noise, he's aligning every piece of the puzzle, unseen. The brilliance of it lies in how late the world realizes he was never invisible, only ignored. By the time people notice him, it's because he's already shifted the outcome. By the time they feel his influence, he's already shaped the result. By the time they call him a threat, he's already taken the throne no one saw him reaching for. That delayed recognition is where his danger lives. He doesn't just win, he wins quietly, completely, leaving everyone wondering how it even happened. It's not sorcery. It's strategy. A Sigma male doesn't waste energy fighting for notice. He uses silence as his field and patience as his armor. He doesn't provoke fear or jealousy, he simply operates where others aren't looking. And then one day, he steps out of the shadows, not to ask for permission or applause, but to claim what's already his. By the time you realize he was never in the background, only in control, it's already over. That's the paradox of the Sigma. He's invisible not because he's small, but because he's patient. And when he finally moves, it's not to be seen, it's to remind the world that he was always there, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Number 4. They see motives before actions. Most people listen to what's being said. Some listen to how it's being said. But a Sigma male listens to something deeper, the why behind the words. It's not the speech that interests him, it's the motive wrapped inside it. He doesn't get lost in tone, charm, or performance. He looks straight through them, stripping every word down to its psychological roots. When someone makes a promise, most hear comfort. The Sigma hears control, fear, desperation, or a quiet need to manipulate. When someone brags, most hear confidence. He hears insecurity, trying too hard to sound strong. He sees the architecture beneath emotion, the wiring behind human behavior. It's not cynicism, it's clarity. While others get tangled in what's visible, the Sigma studies what's driving it. And that gives him an unsettling advantage. Psychologists call this high cognitive empathy, the ability to understand others without becoming emotionally entangled. The Sigma uses it like a weapon. He observes how people flinch when pressured, how their tone shifts when they lie, how their body betrays truths their mouths try to bury. He reads intentions, not expressions. And that makes deceiving him almost impossible. Lies can trick the ear, but they can't hide the intention that fuels them. And while people think they're persuading him, charming him, or outsmarting him, he's already dissected their real motive, cataloged, processed, and stored for later use. The danger isn't just in what he knows. It's that he rarely shows his hand. He doesn't confront. He lets others keep talking, exposing themselves, building the very map he'll later use against them. That patience, that stillness, is what makes him so intimidating. Because you never know if he's buying into your story, or quietly memorizing every detail of it. A man who sees past words and straight into motives isn't reacting to the surface, he's anticipating the next 3 steps. And by the time others realize he's been reading why instead of what, he's already positioned himself miles ahead of them. That's the Sigma's quiet genius. He doesn't just see behavior. He sees intention. And in a world full of people acting on impulse, that kind of insight isn't just intelligence, it's power. Number 5. They calculate the long game. The Sigma male doesn't move for the moment, he moves for the outcome. Where most people crave instant validation, the Sigma has trained his mind to detach from the now and think in terms of later. He plays the long game, the kind of strategy that doesn't make sense until it's over. While others chase applause, he's busy laying foundations. While they sprint for attention, he's walking steadily toward power. You see, the Sigma understands a rare truth. Real dominance doesn't come from force, it comes from foresight. He doesn't react to the noise around him, he studies it. He watches patterns form, rise, and collapse, quietly taking notes while everyone else burns energy chasing the temporary. He knows that most people's downfall isn't lack of talent, it's lack of patience. They can't sit in uncertainty long enough to see how the story unfolds. But the Sigma can. Because he's not trying to prove anything. He's not racing anyone. He's moving according to a clock only he understands, slow, deliberate, precise. When others quit out of boredom, he's still there, refining. When they celebrate early, he's still building, calculating the second phase before the first one even ends. That's the difference between a player and a strategist. A player reacts to moves. A strategist creates the board. And the Sigma? He's not interested in winning one battle, he's structuring a lifetime of victories, each one disguised as coincidence. Even his silence is a strategy. He knows every word spoken too early gives someone else a weapon. So he waits. Observes. Lets others reveal their impatience, their hunger, their weakness. And when he finally moves, it's not spontaneous. It's the final piece of a pattern that's been in motion for months, maybe years. People often call it luck. They think he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But what they don't see is that he built that place, and timed it perfectly. The Sigma's life is a chessboard. He's not playing to impress anyone watching, he's playing to end the game with quiet, absolute control. Because when you think in years instead of moments, you don't just survive, you outlast. Number 6. They stay calm in chaos. When the world starts burning, most people reveal who they really are. Panic exposes character. Fear dismantles masks. And in that chaos, when logic collapses and noise takes over, the Sigma male stands out for one simple reason. He doesn't flinch. It's not that he doesn't feel the pressure. He does. He just doesn't submit to it. Where others get swept up in the storm, the Sigma becomes still, cold, centered, analytical. To him, chaos is not a threat. It's information. It shows who's disciplined, who's impulsive, who cracks under heat. While everyone else is reacting, he's studying, learning what the storm reveals about those around him. That's why he rarely loses control. He's conditioned his emotions to serve his logic, not sabotage it. You'll never catch him shouting, panicking, or scrambling for direction. His silence in a crisis isn't confusion, it's calculation. Psychologists call this low neuroticism under stress, a rare ability to maintain clarity in emotional overload. But for the Sigma, it's more than psychology. It's philosophy. He's learned that panic never changes the outcome, it only narrows your vision. So he trains himself to see clearly when others can't. It's in those moments of disorder that his true advantage appears. When everyone else is too emotional to think, the Sigma is already 3 moves ahead, creating order from the noise. And the more pressure mounts, the calmer he gets, because he knows something most people forget. chaos is temporary. But the decisions you make inside it last forever. That's why he's so dangerous in uncertain environments. He doesn't waste energy on fear or outrage. He uses every ounce of focus on reading the situation, identifying leverage, and turning instability into strategy. His calm isn't emptiness, it's controlled fire. And when he finally moves, he doesn't just survive the chaos. He uses it. Because while others drown in emotion, the Sigma male breathes in silence. And in silence, he becomes unstoppable. Number 7. They don't need permission to lead. Leadership, for most people, is something they chase. They crave the title, the validation, the applause that says you're in charge now. But the Sigma male doesn't wait to be handed authority, he simply acts like someone who already has it. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. While others are busy asking, who's in charge, the Sigma is already moving with purpose, direction, and certainty, and people naturally follow that energy. See, true leadership doesn't begin with a position, it begins with presence. The Sigma doesn't talk about what should be done, he just does it. And that quiet decisiveness pulls others in. Without even trying, he becomes the gravitational center in a room full of noise. He understands that permission is the language of dependency. Most people are trained to seek approval before taking action. They want reassurance that what they're doing is acceptable, correct, or safe. But the Sigma operates on internal validation. He doesn't need anyone to believe in his direction, he is his own compass. That's why people can't quite categorize him. He doesn't fit the alpha mold, loud, commanding, territorial. He doesn't fit the beta mold either, compliant, seeking validation. He exists in a third space, the one between dominance and detachment. When he leads, it's not through control but through clarity. He doesn't shout, he simply knows where he's going. He doesn't demand loyalty, he earns it through quiet competence. And those around him feel it. They can sense when someone operates from genuine confidence instead of performance. That's why even stronger personalities find themselves following his direction, not because he forced them to, but because his self-assurance leaves no room for doubt. He doesn't inspire through charisma, he inspires through conviction. You can't fake that. You can't rehearse it. It comes from the man who's done his thinking in silence, who's wrestled with uncertainty long enough to know his own mind. When a Sigma male steps forward, the room changes. Not because he demands attention, but because everyone subconsciously realizes, this is someone who doesn't need to be told what to do. And in a world full of people waiting for permission, that kind of certainty is rare. That kind of independence is power. Number 8. They're immune to social hierarchies. Most people unconsciously rank themselves. They walk into a room and immediately start measuring, who's more confident, who's more attractive, who holds more status. They adjust their behavior based on that mental scale, rising or shrinking depending on where they believe they stand. But the Sigma male doesn't play that game. He sees hierarchy for what it really is, a collective illusion held together by insecurity and validation. He doesn't feel the need to climb ladders, because he doesn't recognize ladders to begin with. He knows that most hierarchies are built not on truth, but on perception, on how well people can sell the image of importance. And he has no interest in being part of a performance. That's what makes him untouchable. You can't manipulate a man who's not chasing rank. You can't threaten someone who doesn't measure his worth through comparison. The Sigma's confidence doesn't come from position, it comes from self-containment. His sense of value isn't dependent on validation, approval, or recognition. It's internal, earned through solitude and discipline. While others obsess over how they're seen, he focuses on what he is. That's why social pressure slides off him. He doesn't need to impress, outperform, or conform. He simply exists on his own frequency, calm, deliberate, and detached. Psychologically, this is known as status independence, a state where self-worth is detached from external hierarchy. Few ever reach it, because it requires walking away from everything that makes people feel safe. But for the Sigma, safety has never been the goal. Freedom has. In a world where everyone's fighting to climb higher, he's the one walking sideways, not competing, just existing outside the entire structure. And paradoxically, that's what draws attention to him. His refusal to bow or boast makes him the one everyone silently respects, even when they don't understand why. Because deep down, people can sense it. The energy of a man who doesn't need to prove anything. He's not beneath anyone. He's not above anyone. He's simply beyond the need to compare. And that's what makes the Sigma male truly dangerous in any social arena. You can't outrank a man who doesn't see ranks at all. Number 9. They turn solitude into strength. For most people, solitude feels like emptiness, a space they rush to fill with noise, validation, or distraction. They fear being alone because, in silence, they're forced to confront themselves. But for the Sigma male, solitude isn't isolation. It's refinement. He doesn't run from being alone, he walks into it willingly. Because he knows that solitude is where the noise dies and truth begins to speak. It's where he resets, recharges, and reconstructs his mind away from the distortion of society. In solitude, the Sigma becomes sharper. He studies his thoughts like a scientist, testing them against reality, removing illusions until only clarity remains. He trains his discipline, strengthens his mental independence, and sharpens his intuition. Psychologically, solitude functions as cognitive recalibration, a mental detox from the endless feedback loops of social approval. Most people never experience it long enough to discover who they are without input. But the Sigma does. Because he knows that the man who masters solitude masters himself. There's a quiet paradox in that stillness. The world sees him withdrawing and assumes he's detached or uninterested. But in truth, he's evolving. Every hour alone becomes an investment in awareness, focus, and emotional stability. That's why when he returns to the world, he carries a different energy. Unrushed. Unbothered. Unmoved. People can feel that peace, that internal steadiness that can't be faked or borrowed. It's the byproduct of a mind that no longer fears its own company. In solitude, he doesn't escape the world, he rebuilds his strength for it. And when he steps back into the noise, he's no longer swayed by it. Because he's already faced the hardest thing a man can face. His own reflection in silence. The Sigma male's solitude isn't emptiness, it's power under construction. While others drown in loneliness, he's mining wisdom from it. And that's why he always returns sharper, calmer, and one step ahead. He doesn't seek company to feel complete. He seeks solitude to stay whole. Number 10. They withdraw to regain power. When most people feel drained or defeated, they rush outward. They seek company, distraction, or noise, anything to escape the discomfort of emptiness. But the Sigma male does the opposite. He withdraws. Not as a retreat, but as a recalibration. See, the Sigma understands that energy is currency, and every interaction costs something. Every conversation, every environment, every relationship either feeds or drains him. And when the balance tilts too far, he doesn't wait to burn out. He disappears. His withdrawal isn't weakness, it's maintenance. While the world mistakes stillness for stagnation, the Sigma knows that silence is the only place where power regrows. In solitude, he sorts through what's real and what's residue. He reflects on his direction, his purpose, his emotional balance. He sheds everything that's been clinging to him, the expectations, the projections, the invisible weight of other people's noise. It's during these disappearances that his mind becomes sharp again. Detached. Clean. He recenters his focus, reclaims his energy, and rebuilds his calm authority. Psychologists call this strategic withdrawal, the conscious act of stepping back to preserve and restore inner resources. For the Sigma, it's second nature. He doesn't need validation for vanishing, nor explanation for his silence. He simply knows that presence loses meaning without periodic absence. And when he returns, he comes back different, quieter, but stronger. More composed, more deliberate. The same man, but with sharpened edges and renewed control. That rhythm, disappear, rebuild, return, is how he stays powerful in a world that never stops demanding energy. It's how he avoids emotional fatigue and mental chaos. It's why he can face storms and remain unshaken, because he's learned the value of disconnecting before the system collapses. To others, his sudden silence feels mysterious. They wonder if something's wrong. But in truth, it's the opposite, it's the moment he becomes right again. Because the Sigma knows that real strength doesn't come from constant presence. It comes from knowing when to step back and reset. When the world burns itself out chasing attention, he's already in the shadows, quietly recharging his fire. Number 11. They never explain themselves. Most people feel the need to justify their actions. They explain, defend, rationalize, because approval, understanding, and acceptance matter to them. But the Sigma male operates differently. He doesn't owe anyone a reason. He doesn't bend to expectation. He doesn't clarify, apologize, or elaborate. To the untrained eye, it might seem like arrogance. But it's far more calculated than that. He knows that words are currency, and if he spends them unnecessarily, he gives others leverage. A Sigma understands a fundamental psychological truth. Explaining oneself is often a concession of control. When you justify, you give someone the chance to argue, to manipulate, to question. He refuses that opportunity. By staying silent, he forces the world to meet him on his terms. By not explaining, he becomes unpredictable. By not defending, he preserves energy for what actually matters. People grow frustrated. They push for answers, for transparency, for acknowledgement. But the Sigma doesn't flinch. He's unmoved by demand. He's untouchable by expectation. And that silence? It isn't absence. It's strategy. It forces reflection. It creates curiosity. It subtly shifts power toward him, without a single word. Psychologically, it's the effect of controlled opacity, a state where mystery becomes influence. People project their assumptions, miscalculate his intentions, and in doing so, expose themselves. The Sigma doesn't need to win arguments. He doesn't need to persuade anyone. He simply allows his restraint to do the work. When he acts, people notice. When he speaks, it carries weight. When he chooses silence, it reshapes the room. He's not evasive. He's deliberate. Because a man who doesn't explain himself cannot be manipulated, cannot be cornered, cannot be owned. And in a world obsessed with control and validation, that kind of independence is not just power. It's untouchable authority. Number 12. They master passive power plays. Most people equate power with noise, raised voices, visible dominance, or forceful action. But the Sigma male knows something most never learn. The quietest power is often the strongest. He doesn't need to command attention. He doesn't need to prove himself. He moves like water, flowing, patient, unseen, yet shaping everything it touches. Passive power is subtle. It doesn't intimidate at first glance. It works through absence, restraint, and strategic disengagement. When the Sigma withdraws, people overcompensate. When he stops reacting, they reveal their true intentions. When he refuses to chase, they begin to chase him. This isn't manipulation. It's observation made tangible. It's influence without announcement. It's control exercised quietly, while the world thinks they're still in command. He plants ideas in silence so that others believe they came from themselves. He withdraws attention so that it becomes a coveted resource. He steps back, and in doing so, reshapes the dynamics around him. Psychologically, this is the Sigma's mastery of passive influence, the ability to lead without leading, to dominate without overt confrontation. Most people confuse activity for power. But the Sigma knows, power is measured in impact, not visibility. And therein lies the brilliance, the danger. You never see the move until it has already shifted the board. You never realize you've been guided until the outcome is complete. By the time you understand, the Sigma has already achieved what others spent noise and energy trying to claim. His greatest strength isn't strength at all. It's his restraint. His patience. His ability to turn absence into presence, calm into control, and silence into strategy. That is the essence of the Sigma male. He doesn't fight for attention. He doesn't shout to be heard. He doesn't demand recognition. He simply exists. Quietly shaping the world while others scramble to prove themselves. The Sigma doesn't win battles, he wins the entire game. Not through force, not through domination, not through display. But through subtlety, calculation, and the quiet mastery of influence. And that is why the Sigma male is far more dangerous than anyone will ever dare to admit. Most people mistake power for noise, dominance for aggression, and victory for applause. But the Sigma male operates on an entirely different plane. He moves through life like a shadow in plain sight, silent, patient, unshaken, and always 2 steps ahead. He doesn't fight for battles. He wins wars. He doesn't bend to expectations. He creates his own rules. He doesn't need validation. He exists beyond it. By the time the world realizes what happened, the Sigma has already claimed the outcome, not with force, but with quiet mastery. So remember this, the man you overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed, he may have been the one shaping everything all along. That is the true power of the Sigma male, not in what he shows, but in everything he quietly accomplishes. If this video gave you value, hit that like button and subscribe. Join this community of men who refuse to be ordinary. Stay focused, stay disciplined, and embrace the Sigma mindset. Thank you for watching.